right. Hello and welcome to Saturday Snack, Pairing Art and Food. On behalf of the students, staff, and volunteers at the IU Eskenazi Museum of Art, thank you for gathering around the virtual table with us this afternoon. In this episode, we're thrilled to talk with Brandon Query Bay and Katerina Koch, who are involved with an innovative program in Paoli, Indiana, called the Community Nutrition Program. My name is Keaton, my pronouns are he, him. I'm a museum host and a student studying arts management. With me to host the program are Laura Shepper, Public Experiences Manager, and Kaylee Dance, Food and Lifestyle Instagrammer. Our goal this afternoon is to simply gather around the table virtually to connect with one another over food and art. Together, we'll explore a playful way to interpret art, no expertise needed. Grab your munchies or drink and get comfy. First, we wish to acknowledge and honor the indigenous communities native to this region and recognize that Indiana University Bloomington was built on indigenous homelands and resources. We recognize the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people as past, present, and future caretakers of this land. This afternoon's program is being recorded. Here are some tips for optimizing your experience today. There are several ways to adjust the size of the images on the screen while we're looking at artwork. If you're connecting from a PC or laptop, at the top of your screen, look for View Options. Click on View Options to select settings that work best for you. The vertical bar between the slides and the speaker slides left and right to make the presentation slides bigger or smaller. For those connecting with a phone or iPad, you may be able to enlarge images by pinching the screen. Closed captioning is available. This can be turned on through your Zoom toolbar, which is typically located at the bottom of your screen. We invite you to participate in the conversation today. There are two ways to do this. You're welcome to type into the chat. The chat will not be visible in the recording. If you wish to be unmuted to speak with us during parts of the conversation, we invite you to use the raise hand feature on your toolbar. Again, both of these features are found on your Zoom toolbar, typically at the bottom of your screen. The Eskenazi Museum values its students, and I have the great privilege of introducing today's two featured guests. Brandon Query Bay works at Lost River Market in Delhi as the Healthy Initiative Coordinator. He moved to Paoli, Indiana with his wife in 2015, and they fell in love with the beautiful forests and people in this little southern Indiana town. They enjoy hiking the local trails, eating delicious food, and spending time with friends and family. Katerina Koch has lived throughout Indiana. She grew up in Northwest Indiana, went to college in Indianapolis, and then graduate school here in Bloomington, and has made her home in Southwest Central Indiana uplands. She's the Fund Development Manager and grant writer for Southern Indiana Community Healthcare, and she is a personal chef and caterer. Katerina learned to cook from her second-generation Italian and Lithuanian immigrant families and appreciates food and art cultures from around the world. She also serves as the board chair for the Lost River Community Cooperative and the Orange County Health Coalition. Both of you, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to be talking with you. All right, well, let's get started. Kaylee, will you please gather everyone around the virtual table?
Of course. So as Keaton mentioned, I am a local foodie in the Bloomington scene. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about me or get to know the food around Bloomington, feel free to follow me on Instagram. I will drop my link in the chat. If I could have you all, one, just use this as a time to practice using our chat feature. Drop your name and where you're tuning in from into the chat. And as we have you do that, I'll have Laura, Brandon, and Katerina introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about the Community Nutrition Program.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Laura. My pronouns are she and her. I do serve as the Public Experiences Manager at the Eskenazi Museum of Art. It is such a joy to gather around the table and just talk about food and art. Brandon and Katerina, I want to give you a chance to say hello as well. So I'll turn it over first to Brandon. Oh, we might need to help with the unmute. There we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon. As they said, I work at Lost River Market. I've been involved with food in different ways, from farming and production to now doing education and food box programming at the market. So it's great being here and being able to be a part of this discussion.
Thanks, Brandon. And Katerina, hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you. So excited to be here today. Like you said in my intro, I've been cooking for most of my life, and made it a part of my profession a few years ago, mostly just as a side gig now. But working in Southern Indiana, and Paoli has really given me a lot of opportunities to explore different foods, local foods, and really good produce.
Wonderful. And I'm super excited about your pairings today. Before we jump into the art and the food, I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about the community nutrition program or the Artisan Box program, the innovative programming that you both have been involved with in Orange County.
Yeah, so the community nutrition program really began last year when we received a grant that helped us fund this. And the whole mission of our project started with aggregating, distributing, and providing channels for our local farmers to just move more food in our community, locally grown food in our community. And when we were analyzing that, we realized a lot of increasing demand was going to be also educating people in our community around how to use local food, why local food would be better overall, not just economically, but for your personal health, things like that. And so we partnered with Cooking Matters, which is a national food education program that targets low-income families, specifically those with children. And we have this 6-week program now where participants get a weekly box of food, a recipe to go with that. They get a cooking lesson. We've done it all virtually through YouTube and Facebook because of COVID. We weren't able to meet in person. And they get a nutrition lesson as well. And then we're all a part of an online Facebook group where participants can engage as well with one another, share photos of what they're making, things like that. And so the recipe I chose today actually comes from that Facebook group, and one of the recipes we used in our cooking community nutrition program. Along with that, we also have other food box programs that we're doing that have different objectives. We have a Lost River CSA that focuses purely on local produce, whereas the community nutrition was more meal-based, so they're getting ingredients for an entire meal. CSA is produce only. And then we also have an Artisan Chef's Box program, which brings together 5 different chefs in our community, which Katarina is one of them. And we combined different dishes, I suppose each week. It's soup, bread, a spread, and then we have a bonus item. And that's a 10-week program that they all contribute into. And it was just another way for us to provide a distribution channel for local chefs. And I think Katarina wanted to talk a little bit more about her involvement in both those programs.
Yeah, my involvement came in multiple different levels. As the fund development manager at Southern Indiana Community Healthcare, I was kind of a liaison between the health clinic and Lost River Market for some of the community produce projects last summer. One of our physicians, he was seeing that patients he wanted to meet them where they were at, trying to get them to eat real food instead of boxed and processed foods. So kind of moving from boxed potatoes to a real potato. And so that was one of the inspirations for our collaboration with Lost River Market and Deli. We ended up recruiting patients who had A1C diabetics over uncontrolled levels. And we recruited them for the program, and we recorded their biometrics before and after the program to see any significant changes in those health metrics, which there was. Those were the findings, that they improved their health overall over the course of the nutrition program. Which is, really exciting on multiple different levels, but we're exposing people to real food, we're changing their health outcomes, and we're collecting data in our rural local community. And then my involvement with the artisan chef boxes. It's been fairly minimal, but it's part of just trying to increase the talent in this community. Valuing high quality foods is it's really hard to when you have low income families and communities. There's a lot of drive through fast food, shopping at Dollar Generals and things that are really processed. So aggregating that food in a box, making it like a more affordable level of being able to access high quality foods is really important to me, and one of the ways that I'm able to contribute to those subscription boxes.
Wow, this is so very exciting. First of all, thank you both so much for the work that you're doing in this space. It's innovative. It's so needed. Thank you for the work. Thank you for sharing this with us. And also just thank you for taking the time to be with us today, to take a step into a different area to talk about not only the nutrition aspects, but also trying something new with pairing with art. Yeah, I am super excited about the work that you're doing. So there are 17 of us gathered at the table today together, and I would just like to invite again, if there's anybody else at the table who would love to hear I personally would love to hear who's with us today. If you would like to drop into the chat your first name, your pronouns, where you're connecting from, or if there's, if you're munching on some food, we're just curious to kind of gather as a group virtually and connect. So I'll just leave a bit of space for that. If anybody would like to say hello. So in terms of how we do our food pairing, with each pairing, and so I'm going to ask also if folks do start to say hello, I'm going to ask Haley and Keaton to help me out with that, because I'm not going to watch the chat at the moment. So for each pairing that we do, we use what is called a thinking routine. It is from our friends and colleagues at Harvard Project Zero. A thinking routine is a set of 3 questions. There's a powerful tool for, it's like a habit of mind, a powerful tool for thinking more deeply and looking closely and having more meaningful conversation. So the thinking routine that we're using today is called See, Think, Wonder. And this is something that we can use not only in pairing art and food, but in other aspects of life when we're looking at things together. People sometimes ask me when they visit a museum, what am I supposed to do when I look at a work of art? I'm not sure what to do in the galleries. And I'll tell you, there's no wrong answers. There's so many different ways to enjoy art. But if you're not sure where to start, whether you're on your own or with a friend, these same set of 3 questions that we use today are a fantastic tool for having a conversation or reflecting on your own. So with that, and I will say also, when we do our food pairing, we choose a visual menu, just like you would have a menu at a restaurant. Instead of a menu of food, we have a menu of artworks. So our first artwork on the menu was selected by Brandon. So here's the image. I will tell you a little bit about it later after we look closely. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at it. Then after we have a moment to look, we will describe what we see. Then we'll talk a bit about what kind of thoughts this evokes for us, and then we'll get into what we might wonder. So first, let's just start with a quiet moment to let our eyes just soak in this image. Okay, so I'm going to start with the question of what do you see? And so what I'd like everybody to do who's with us today, it would be to describe what you see with as much vivid detail as you can. So you're welcome to take what you noticed and however as much description as you can give and pop it into the chat. And I'm going to start by inviting our guests today, and Kaylee. Kaylee, would you like to kick us off with what you see?
Of course. So the first thing that actually caught my eye was the fence, because it looks like it was made out of just like, not necessarily sticks, but just wood in general, which I think is just different from what I'm used to seeing. But that was the first thing that I saw.
Cool. Brandon, what catches your eye here? What do you see when looking at this artwork that you have, of course, selected?
Yeah, the first is kind of the golden accents that are used, and just honestly how simple I mean, he's just got like little dots on the top of some of these fence posts that, you know, just such a simple touch to create that accent. And then the barn actually catches my eye, and just is so reminiscent of some of these old farmsteads in southern Indiana that, I mean, I just love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Katerina, what do you notice when looking at this artwork?
Well, I'm drawn to the highlights of the trees, like Brandon said, and also the hills behind it, and it doesn't quite look like it's a sunset. It might be like late afternoon or something like that, and just kind of the overall glow of the setting.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. The glow, and I noticed the distant, just bit of some rolling hills in the background. I'm noticing this tree in the foreground. It's got a lovely reddish hue to it, and the golden hue of the leaves on this particular tree, and just kind of the rolling, the grass in the foreground, and then in the middle here, the grass, fencing. I'm curious if anybody else at the table is noticing anything. So we all are drawn, we all look at things, we have brains that are wired different ways. People might notice something else that just wondering what else people might see. And Brandon, is there anything else that might catch your eye in this? Well,
The tree definitely caught my eye. Just, and you know, the way the colors portray the seasonality of where all this is, or when all this is. I do some carpentry work on the side, so the wood structures, the wood fence, I was drawn to all of that. And honestly, yeah, like one of my favorite things to do around southern Indiana is just drive around and just see the random homesteads. You know, you see all kinds just from driving these country roads, and it just, yeah, there's something magical about it. And so I guess it's, yeah, nothing particular, but the scene in general just is so fitting.
Sure.
I think one thing that I saw that kind of caught me off guard was actually the green in the sky. That was something new for me. I've never seen someone use green to kind of showcase what the sky would look like before. So I thought that was really cool.
That's really interesting. Thanks
Mhm.
for that. It's up in this area here, isn't it? So based on what we're seeing with our eyes and based on your own life experience, when you're looking at this, what thoughts come to mind? Brandon, would you?
So, Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I touched on it a little bit. Really, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. When you had mentioned, Laura, about, you know, people going to a museum and what do I think about, or like how do I observe this? That's been me. And so, but it's been really interesting. And I was talking to Debbie about this. It's like, as I've looked at this piece and really thought about it, it has shown me how much depth and memory can come from this. So when I first selected this, it was, you know, very basic, reminiscent of Southern Indiana, which it is a Southern Indiana scene. But then I got to thinking about that with my food pairing a little bit, and it actually has taken me back to when I got married here. Was around this time of the year. It was like the last day, literally the last day of living things on the trees. The next day we got a heavy frost and everything, you know, died back and turned brown. But this scene, and especially the rolling hills back there, really remind me of that day. We're currently working on a little cabin here in southern Indiana, and the barn really reminds me of that place and where we're hoping to make our future home here. So those are just a few of the thoughts. I could go on, but those are just a few of the thoughts that come to mind.
Wow, what a happy memory, and also just future looking. Thank you so much for sharing this. That means a lot. Kaylee, what were you going to say? I'm sorry that I cut you off before.
You're totally fine. So like Brandon said, this kind of brought back memories for me. So because this is a Southern Indiana scene, specifically because it's Brown County. Brown County was actually one of the first places that I visited in the Bloomington area when I first came down here for college. So I have a very fond memory of going out to the state park that's out there in the fall and just seeing all these beautiful red and gold trees. And I remember going into town and going to this little shop where they had cookies that were literally the size of my head. So when I show my food pairing later, that's gonna come into play. But I don't know why, but for some reason when I saw this, I just started thinking about cookies and fall leaves.
Wow, that's so cool. Katerina, based on your own life experience, what thoughts, if any, are coming to mind for you?
Well, right after college, before I moved to Southern Indiana, I spent about a year in New Hampshire in the White Mountains. And I was there for a full, all 4 seasons. And seeing those seasons change up there was really spectacular. Also the hills and the mountains up there reminds me of that. In particular, I was taking a drive up in the White Mountains, and a group of friends, we stopped at like an overlook, and there was it wasn't a barn, but it was like a little shelter house, and then you can just see all of the hills and valleys, and the colors of the fall, and that's what's coming to mind for me.
Wow, thank you for sharing. It's so interesting, all the different memories and thoughts of experiences that that can be evoked. I'm wondering if there's anybody else who's with us at the virtual table today who would like to share a thought or experience or a memory that comes to mind. Keaton, do you have anything to share, or is there anything in the chat to share?
No, nobody's in the chat yet. Again, we welcome you to share. We're all at the table together here. What comes to mind for me, I drive through Brown County to get back to my parents' house. I live in Columbus. And on 46, there's this wonderful scenic view with like a red barn and all of these hills. And it looks like, it doesn't look just like that, but it reminds me so much of that view just on the way to Nashville.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, I wonder now, based on like the thoughts that have come to mind, what questions or curiosities, if any, are coming up for you all? Is there any questions that come to mind when you're looking at this artwork? Let's open up to anybody who would like to share if there are any thoughts or any questions that come to mind.
Just a question I'm thinking of is, who's living there? How are they living? How do they sustain themselves, living in a rural area like that, what their life is like?
I wondered that too.
I kind of had a similar question as well, because it does kind of look like they have a little bit of a garden. So it makes me wonder, like, is that for themselves, or are they farmers? Do they sell their food? But yeah, that was kind of the first question that I had.
Thanks, Kaylee. I'm also going to open it up to the rest of the folks at the table if there are questions. And I also am just going to share a little bit about this artwork. The artist's name is Gustav Baumann. He is an American artist who lived from 1881 to 1971. This artwork is titled Autumnal Brown County Scene, Barn and View of Rolling Hills. It was created around 1912. It is a watercolor painting, watercolor tempera and graphite on watercolor board. The size of it, which I know it's hard to tell when we're virtual, is about 8.5 inches by almost 9.5 inches. It is a gift of the Ann Baumann Trust to Indiana, the Eskenazi Museum of Art at Indiana University. And I'd like to share a bit of information that was provided by, excuse me, the Lucian M. Globinger Curator of Works on Paper. Her name is Nan Brewer. She shared this with me. Gustav Baumann was one of the first printmakers associated with the Brown County Art Colony, and he is perhaps the most internationally recognized member of that group. In 1909, he became a part-time resident of Nashville, Indiana, and a close partner, or a close friend, of painter T.C. Steele. Baumann continued to travel between southern Indiana and Chicago until 1916, when he relocated to Santa Fe, New Mexico. He used drawings and colorful tempera paintings on paper as the basis for his woodcuts. While no corresponding print has been identified for the work above, it reflects Baumann's sensitivity to the natural beauty and bucolic charm of rural Brown County. These works are part of a gift of 27 unique works on paper from the estate of the artist's only child, Anne Baumann. So next, I would like to ask if there's anybody joining with us who has any thoughts or ideas about food or beverage that might pair with this artwork. There hasn't been as much participation in the chat as usual today, so I will move on to share. We'll reveal some food pairings. I'm just going to adjust my own screen. So with this, my pairing with this is a zesty buttercup squash salad. When I was looking at the artwork, I was noticing the hues and some memories, and I actually thought back to a prior episode of Pairing Art and Food when we talked with executive chef David Talent, and he shared, we were looking at a fall scene, and he shared a memory of butternut squash, and the reason he'd been drawn into the cooking profession was about fall and the change of seasons and just really wanting to cook at that time. And he had this memory of squash being closely associated with the change of the season. And so I think when I saw this in the fall, I was thinking of my local farmer's market, and I thought of squash. We actually had a local a buttercup squash. And so I knew I wanted to do something with that. So I have used, I've adapted a recipe from, I'm gonna grab my cookbook, from the Feast the cookbook. This is from a community that I previously lived in. Before I lived in Bloomington, I was living in Tairāwhiti, well, in New Zealand on the east coast of the North Island. And this was from my local community, fantastic cookbook that I still love. The recipe that I'm working with is by Cherie Mirko. It is actually a zesty kumara salad. Kumara is like a sweet potato, and she does it with pomegranate molasses dressing. Didn't have pomegranate on hand, and so I have adapted it to local produce here. So I've gone with a buttercup squash, and it was that roasty feeling. I roasted it. To me, that was like going with the feeling that I get in the painting and some of the glow we talked about earlier. I've included a number of local ingredients that to me tied into the feeling and the colors of in my own personal experience of this artwork. Like I used some spring onions. And I know there's this question of spring and fall here, but for me personally, my experience of those two seasons are intertwined. Having lived in the Southern Hemisphere before moving to Bloomington, I know fall here is spring there. There's an interchangeability, there's an interesting relationship for me personally between spring and fall, a juxtaposition and a simultaneous awareness of both. So I've got spring onions in this fall scene. I've used a local goat cheese from Rising Creek Creamery, red bell peppers, either cherry tomatoes, in this case they were grape tomatoes. I've got avocado. I've got, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's some, what I would call red capsicum. Like here it's known as just a red bell pepper, and cashews tossed in there. So this was my pairing. I'm gonna just check the chat and see if there are thoughts. Okay. I'm gonna turn it over next to Kaylee to share your pairing with this artwork.
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, my memory that was brought in was those giant cookies. So I actually stopped over at the Bloomington Chocolate Company here in town and picked up some cookie flavored truffles. So what you're seeing are a cookies and cream truffle, a turtle cookie truffle, a chocolate chip cookie dough truffle, and a peanut butter cookie truffle. I'm also staring at them right next to me, and I cannot wait to dive into these afterwards.
That's fantastic. I really love how you weaved your memory into this pairing. Oh gosh, it looks so delicious. Wish we were together in person for this. Brandon, you've selected to pair this with the Works pizza. Can you tell us about why you chose this pairing and tell us about the recipe of the experience?
Yeah, so it really started kind of simple. I was thinking color values, hues, things like that when I was looking at what painting to pair with, because I knew I wanted to do something with this pizza. It's been kind of a foundational recipe in our program, and something easy and fun for people to make. And so what we did here is create a collage of 4 different participants' pizzas, and I think it's neat because you see a slight variation, and everybody had the same recipe, but a slight variation in the way everyone made it. But as I thought about it more, we can start to think about some of the ingredients that goes into this pizza: tomatoes, peppers, this artwork and the time of the year it is. You're kind of looking at a last harvest of some of those crops before you start getting into heavy frost. So I thought that was kind of neat. As somebody that farmed for about 4 years, that's close to my heart, and just that seasonality as a grower, just kind of things are on their way out. You're kind of moving into your slower hibernation season. But then also, I had touched on my memory before with the wedding, and around this time of the year, and we actually did brick oven pizzas for our wedding. So we got very fortunate we got an old tomato products company that's owned by a local couple. They had converted it into a venue and had it was a brick oven out there, and they did brick oven pizzas and so it was great how it all fit together with that memory. And that wasn't intentional when I first chose it, but that's kind of how it developed.
I love this. I'm just having so much fun. I love how you brought this in on so many different levels, like, relating to the brick oven, your wedding, participants' experiences. I think it's interesting to show you've got 4 perspectives here on where they all use the same recipe, and it's interesting to see just in the way that we're looking at art, we all notice different things, and it's the same artwork, and we're evoking different memories. It's really fun to see when we start with one recipe, just how others, it comes out just a little bit differently for each person. That's really cool. Thanks so much for sharing this with us.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to our second item on the menu today, on our visual menu. And this artwork was selected by Katerina. So I'm just going to allow another quiet moment for everyone just to let their eyes just savor this and sink in for a moment. So again, we're going to start by describing what we can see with as much vivid detail as we can. Kaylee, would you please start for us?
Of course. So I think one of the first things that kind of caught my eye was actually just how the colors don't necessarily blend into each other. It looks very much color blocked throughout the whole thing, which I thought was really cool and kind of different from what I've seen in the past artworks that we've looked at.
That's interesting. Katerina, when you selected this artwork, can you share with us or describe with us with as much vivid detail as you can, what it is that you see when you're looking at this piece?
Yeah, well, of course the colors pop out to me, but I think when I look at it, I'm actually more drawn to the dark space, the negative space. I see more images in those dark spaces than I do in like where the colors are popping out. I also liked this piece because there were elements of it that kind of reminded me of like some forms of indigenous art, like not that it at all really I don't know, there's like the geometry of some of it made me think of that, which also makes me think of local foods, our communities, our land and stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. Brandon, what do you notice when you're looking at this? What could you describe that you see? What catches your eye?
The first thing I'm really drawn to is this kind of purple geometric shape over here.
Right here?
Yeah, exactly. So that, I mean, it reminds me of some kind of portal or something that you can slip through into another dimension.
How
Um,
interesting.
I really like the green space and just the colors of that. And then I also kind of like this like smoky red touch throughout.
Mhm.
And even though it's subtle, I don't know, there's something like warm and comforting about it. I'm not sure. It's more just how it makes me feel, but I like that touch.
Sure. Like you, like the rest of you, I'm noticing a lot of the colors. The blue, I noticed some patterns actually, the blue and the white. Got some yellow. You mentioned the green. There's a number of shades that they just look abstract. Possibly a face in the purple here. Possibly seeing eyes, nose. See some, yeah, rectangular shapes, some what look like stripes, dots. There's a lot happening. Is there anybody else who would care to share anything else that catches their eye in this artwork? Anyone who would like to add more to what they've shared? Okay, now that we've looked at it, the next question is going to be based on your own life experience. What thoughts come to mind?
So this might seem a little out there, but for me, the first thought that comes to mind is actually jazz. And the reason for that is just because a lot of times when I watch like animations or even see an illustration of like jazz being represented, it's always something similar to this. It always has bold colors and abstract shapes. So I really just, I don't know, it just feels like jazz to me. That's what I was thinking about.
That's really cool. Really interesting. I can see exactly what you mean. Katerina, what about you based on your life experience when you're looking at this? What kind of thoughts come to mind for you?
I like that what Kaylee said about jazz because I in the red and the black, I see a metronome where that long piece is the the counter that goes back and forth. Um, I see like a male figure in here over on the left side.
Is it
Someone
this
who's
one?
maybe yeah, and it's kind of a contemplative sort of look. Um, yeah, so just kind of those are the things that I don't know, getting it from my experience. I think that um just like I think of a male figure, thinking of my father, thinking of musicians. um yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Interesting. And Brandon, for you, based on your life experience, what thoughts, if any, are coming to mind for you?
Well, when I first was looking at this yesterday, this bottom left hand corner, and the more I look at it, yeah, kind of in there, there's like a trapezoid type shape. But that reminds me of like a sonogram. I can almost see like a child kind of cradled in that space. And even though sonograms are like a black, white, gray color mixture, that's kind of what that space reminds me of. Um, Really, that was the main thing that came to mind. I had thought about like these little dots, random color dots, especially up in the right hand corner, kind of those like little orbs you see sometimes pop up in photos. And then this this isn't really based on life experience, but that purple shape with the blue head on it reminds me of some kind of abstract colorful penguin. But
I love it. I love it. That's so much fun. For me, when I look at this, I have no expertise in this type of art making, and or the subject matter, and I've never seen the artwork before. Was not familiar with it. But for me, the thoughts that are coming to mind are experimentation. Not knowing anything about how this was made, going into it, it just felt like, yeah, I don't know. It just, yeah, experimentation was the idea that came into my head when I looked at this. So I wonder then, oops, I skipped ahead. I wonder if there are any questions or curiosities before I share a little bit about the artwork. What kind of, as we're looking at this artwork, if there are any questions that come to mind for anyone.
So the first question I actually had was like from the artist's perspective, what was their inspiration? What were they thinking when they made this? Because I don't think I could have just pulled this out of a hat.
That's a fun question. I wonder that too.
Yeah, similarly, kind of what process they had to go through to get to this outcome, and if there was any steps in there that, if this just like all of a sudden came to be, or did it look like something else beforehand, and then when did they decide to stop working on it? Kind of why did they decide to stop here, kind of thing.
That's really interesting. It would be so fascinating to be able to see process images to see how it was developed, which I don't have that, but it would be really interesting. So I'd like to share a little bit about this artwork. I'm adjusting my screen. So this was created by Nathan Lerner and Henry Holmes Smith, both of whom were American. Lerner lived from 1913 to 1997. Holmes Smith lived from 1909 to 1986. This piece is untitled. It was created in 1946. It's a dye transfer print. It is, the image itself is about 7 inches by 9 inches. It is from the Henry Holmes Smith archive at the Eskenazi Museum of Art. And I would like to share with you information that was shared by our assistant curator of photography, Lauren Richmond. This untitled dye transfer print from 1946 is a collaboration between American photographers Nathan Lerner and Henry Holmes Smith. They met in 1937 at Chicago's New Bauhaus, a design school established to continue the tradition of revolutionary German Bauhaus. It was in Smith's inaugural light workshop where Lerner first encountered experimental photography and alternative photographic processes. Although the timeline is unclear, this abstract image was designed and scratched onto matrix film by Lerner and printed by Smith using the complex dye transfer process to apply vibrant coloring. The object symbolizes their many dialogues on light reflection, refraction, and color that stretched over the course of a decade. So I find that really interesting. So I'd like to share the my pairing first because I was thinking about experimentation. I did an untitled, so let's kind of tongue-in-cheek, an untitled appetizer that was very experimental. I was working off some of the colors that I saw, to some extent, maybe a little bit of the shapes. So I started with these black seaweed brown rice crackers as my base. And then I gathered a number of ingredients. I again used the Rising Creek Creamery goat cheese from the local farmers market and fresh greens and cherry tomatoes. I've got a red bell pepper, some avocado. And the purple, I have used a roasted beetroot spread. I've got a bit of hummus in there that works well as an adhesive as well, fresh blueberries and fresh blackberries. So it's experimental. I wasn't sure what flavors would go well together. In fact, I've got a blueberry on top of some goat cheese there, on top of a black seaweed brown rice cracker. Turns out I actually really liked that. It was really good. But I had a lot of fun with this one, just playing with no destination in mind, playing with tastes and textures and colors, and I liked the results. Really quite enjoyed that. Let's see. I'm going to go next. Kaylee, if you could share your pairing with us.
Of course. So this is still from Bloomington Chocolate Company. they have so many truffles in there, like over 20 different flavors. So I really was focused on getting the colors. So I picked a lot of these based specifically on the color. So what you're seeing, and I have them all written and listed out. So I have the yellow one that you're seeing is this white chocolate lemon truffle. The one above that, that's kind of like bluish purple, is actually an olive blackberry wine truffle. The one to the left of that is a dark chocolate raspberry truffle. The one below that is just a milk chocolate truffle. And then the two down there are actually kind of like specialty ones because Easter's right around the corner. So that one on the left, let me look it up again because I can't remember, is a dark chocolate balsamic truffle. And then the one on the right is actually peanut butter, which
Oh,
again,
wow.
staring right at me. And I am so ready.
I'm ready too. I imagine that was good. I love the combination, the flavors that you have selected. I feel like those ingredients just pair so well with this artwork.
Mhm.
When I was looking at it at home with my spouse, he had said, "What about balsamic vinegar?" Some of the number of things you named went through my mind. Yeah, in terms of pairing with the colors and the experience of that particular artwork. That's so very fun. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Mm.
Prepared two amazing dishes with this artwork. So I'm going to ask you first to share this one.
Sure. Well, first I want to say I love the chocolate, Kaylee. Like I was thinking sweets for this, and I especially with the purple, and I just didn't know where to go with it. But I went shopping and just kind of like filled my shopping cart with different things that whatever inspired me. And then I came into the kitchen and I cooked those ingredients and then kind of let them come together as I went. And so my first dish that I came up with is a black beluga lentil. They're called beluga lentils because they look like beluga caviar, like black caviar. So that has red onion and carrot and garlic in it, and then like chicken stock. Um, that's the base, and then the top is just colorful, bright, colorful pasta. Um, with the yellows, I really was trying to go with turmeric, get some of the reds in there. This pasta was colored with turmeric, beetroot, spinach, and paprika, and that's how those colors came out. And then I put in some spicy salami just to add a little bit more of the red in there. And it actually turned out to be really delicious. Yeah. So
Wow,
the
I love
shapes
this.
too, the shapes of the pasta are really different. That I thought was an add. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fun. I can see that working with the shapes and the artwork as well. Yeah, what a fun combination. I really, really love this. And then you shared a second pairing as well. So I'm going to go to that.
Yeah. So I really kind of, in this artwork, I was really focused on the dark, the black part. And so thinking like the black bean lentils, this is a black, or sorry, this is a black bean pasta. Um, so yeah, I was trying to find things that would create the negative space and then find things to pop up with color. So that's just cherry tomatoes in a pan sauce, black bean pasta that was boiled and then added to the sauce with some cheese on top. And then I steamed some rainbow chard and purple kale to add a little bit more of like some darker depth with the color pops coming in.
Wow, just wow. I love it. Where you went with this. What a fun pairing with this artwork. So creative. Thank you so much.
It was a lot of fun to do and a lot of fun to like just explore different foods that some of those things I wouldn't have naturally gotten at the grocery store, and so just kind of pushed me a little bit further into thinking what else I could get.
Thank you so much for willing to push yourself and just step outside the box a little bit to respond creatively and just be up for the idea of trying something different with pairing artwork with food. We really appreciate that. So I wonder, as we're going to wrap up soon, if any of you have anything else that you'd like to share or add into the conversation, If not, I will turn it over to Keaton, but I just want to pause. It's been such a fun conversation, and I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to each of you. Okay, Keaton.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Just personally, this has been such a fun conversation, but also on behalf of the Eskenazi Museum of Art, thank you for talking with us today. We invite you all to see the artwork in person. We have 7 galleries, so there's a lot to explore. And there is the vase here from the Arts of Asia collection, which Muddy Fork Bakery paired with a croissant on a prior episode. So you can check out the croissant vase. The museum is open Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays from noon to 5 p.m. and on Saturdays from noon to 7 p.m. If you missed prior episodes, I'm happy to share that our first 3 episodes, including the one I just referred to, are now available on YouTube. Upcoming, we invite you to our Visiting Artist series featuring Anila Aga this afternoon and Juyong Shin on April 1st. Or treat yourself to a free self-care Saturday with us. Our next wellness retreat is March 27th. Join us for a conversation about how the Eskenazi Museum of Art is thinking through questions of how to represent and display contemporary African art with curators Elliot Reichert and Alison Martino. Conversations on curating, exhibiting contemporary African art is on April 15th. In Women's History Month, we invite you to Art in a Movie, Queen of Hearts, with a live conversation and Q&A with Audrey Flack and film director Deborah Schaefer on March 11th. Pairing art and food and everything at the Eskenazi Museum of Art is made possible by philanthropy. So if you did enjoy today's program, please visit our website and make a contribution. Even gifts of $5 make all the difference. Thank you so much. Before you go, how was your experience today? We appreciate your feedback to help make better experiences. We invite you to share your thoughts in a quick and easy survey as you exit this webinar. But from all of us at the Eskenazi Museum of Art, take care and have a lovely day.
Take care.